Now, if I'm looking for a really special occasion food, well, I'm looking for two things. First, I want it to be richly satisfying. And secondly, I want it to have a sort of handcrafted quality about it. You know, something that really reflects the hands of the people that made it. Well, here in Mexico, they've got the best special occasion food in the world, tamales. What goes into a traditional tamal? That all depends on how you define tradition and what you think is a special occasion. You see, the ancient inventors of the tamal, that would be like the folks that lived around here in Monte Alban in its heyday. Well, some of them thought that the deities looked very favorably on a special tamal that combined corn with iguana. It's been reported that if you were having a rain ceremony, well, this great big nabawa tamal with a pumpkin seed base might just be the ticket. For special festivals or for big weddings, well, you might be filling your tamales with anything from honey to fish or fowl or even fruit. And looking at a 2 or 3 day marathon of tamal making. Well, times change and people move on, and irrigation has replaced the rain ceremonies. And well, let's face it, iguana's just not the rage anymore. But you know, the ancient spirit of the tamal still lives on. Hey, Lainey, have you finished making those little corn husk ties for our tamales?
I'm working on them.
Okay, well, when you get done with them, then you can go outside and play with Bianca.
Okay.
You know, still, after all these years, tamales are a prized delicacy. I mean, they're the main attraction at parties all over Mexico all year long. But if you're looking for a special occasion, well, making tamales is really a special occasion all its own. In fact, they've got a name for it in Mexico. It's called a tamalada. And, you know, I guess you could say that the chance to make these little handcrafted foods, delicious as they are, well, it brings people together. I could say it even ties them together. So Lainey and I have decided that we're gonna have a 3-day tamalada. We're gonna make 3 different kinds of tamales. We're gonna start off with some pretty normal looking tamales in corn husks with a little spicy mushroom filling. And now I'm gonna make this big thing that probably you've never even heard of. It's a tamal roll called a tamalon. And then we're gonna sort of turn the whole thing on its ear and make something totally different. It's a crusty baked tamal called a sacahuil. But you might be thinking, now, how special is all of this stuff? I mean, the masa for making the dough, the corn husks, banana leaves to wrap them all in. I mean, how far do I have to go to get it right? Well, probably not as far as you think. I mean, I'm right here in a Mexican supermarket near my house in Chicago, where you can find everything from key limes to, well, these are the little baby wild tomatillos, plantains, all kinds of chilies imaginable, tamarind, a whole display of Mexican cinnamon, and of course, what we came for, which is corn husks. Now, you can find corn husks practically anywhere in the United States because they're not perishable, and lots of grocery stores will carry them, but our other wrapper, the banana leaf, well, that's a little harder to find. I found them over in the frozen food aisle of this Mexican supermarket. Both of these items you can find by mail order if you just search a little bit. But then again, a lot of the traditional tamales don't even need a leaf wrapper. But the corn masa, well, that's a different story. Corn masa is the heart and soul of the tamal. I mean, there's no way around fresh masa. Well, unless there is. Let me just take you back a couple of steps. Now, I've always said that you can only make the best tamales if you go to your local tortilla factory and you buy fresh ground masa. Now, that's the stuff that's made from dried field corn that's boiled with cal, or what they call calcium hydroxide, till it's almost tender, then it's washed really well and stone ground. What comes out is just a paste. They even sell it over here in the refrigerated case in a bag. You can see that it's real paste-like consistency. Well, the next thing I want to introduce you to, some people might call a shortcut. The rest of us, we call it masa harina, or masa flour. That's just the ground fresh masa that's been rolled out and then dried and powdered. It's quite different than cornmeal, which is just ground dried corn. Now, when I'm making tamales out of masa harina, I don't choose the one that's used for making tortillas. I choose this other one. It's a more coarsely ground masa harina, and it says here for delicious tamales. So we're going to use masa harina exclusively for our little tamalada. In fact, we're going to make basically just one dough and use it in all three of the tamales. So I want to make sure that you really understand how this dough gets made. First of all, we measure out 1 3/4 cups of that masa harina, and then I'm going to reconstitute it with a generous cup of hot tap water. Really about 1 cup and 2 tablespoons. Stir that in to the dried masa until it forms a paste, and then we're just going to let it sit for about 20 minutes for it to completely rehydrate. Now, to this reconstituted masa harina, we have to add all the rest of the ingredients to make the tamales. And the first ingredient, well, might make you waver a little bit from your dedication to tamal making. This is fresh rendered pork lard. Now, when you're making classic tamales, I have to say that this is one of the main flavoring ingredients. And if you use it in moderation for special occasion things like tamales, well, certainly no worse for you than butter. In fact, it adds that same beautiful flavor. Well, it's analogous to cooking something in a little bit of butter, and we all certainly like that. So I'm going to put that into the mixer with a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of salt. Now we're going to beat that for about a minute until it's light and fluffy. I'm going to turn the speed down a little bit on the mixer and start adding the masa to it in about 3 additions there. And then drizzle in about 1/2 cup of chicken broth, and then we'll beat it on high for about 1 minute. Now I'm just going to refrigerate this dough for about an hour. It'll help it to firm up and make it easier to work with, and we'll be ready to form the tamales. Now, mushroom tamales may sound like a stretch for some people, but in Mexico they eat them. They eat them a lot. In fact, if you go up into the highlands, I was just up into Tlaxcala, one of the smallest state in Mexico, out hunting for mushrooms with a mycologist, and you know what they wanted to make with all this great stuff we brought back? Tamales. So we're going to do that, but we don't really exactly have wild mushrooms to choose from, but we've got these great cultivated ones like the oyster mushrooms. These are the big portobellos. These are really my favorite, especially for a dish like that. These are the shiitakes, and they've got great texture and wonderful rustic flavor. The way that you clean them is to pop out the stems on them. They're really quite tough. You can chop them up into little bits if you want and use them, and then slice them into thin strips. Now there's 2 other ingredients that are a must in this kind of a filling, and one is roasted tomatoes. That adds beautiful sweetness. Put them under the broiler for about 6 minutes per side, flipping them over, and then getting them nice and browned on the outside. They'll actually be blackened in spots and quite soft. Cool them off, peel off those skins, and then cut them into small dice. You don't have to be too exact about that. The third of the ingredients that we're going to use as a major flavor here is the roasted poblanos. I like to do them over an open flame, like your gas flame on your stove, turning them until they're completely blackened and blistered on the outside. Put a kitchen towel over the top of them so that they can, well, we call it sweat, soften the outside skin, and then just pull that right off. That skin will come right off. Rinse them, take the seeds out of them, and then I'm slicing that into thin strips. Now all this is going to go into a skillet together. I've already got some onions and garlic browned in my pan. Low heat here. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And to that pan, we're going to add all of these mushrooms that we've sliced up. I'm going to put in the chopped roasted tomato and the poblano strips. And then we're going to stir this and let it cook together until everything is reduced to a kind of thick mass. That'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll let it cool off. Okay, now we're going to season our mushroom tamal filling with a little Mexican oregano, a little thyme. You want to start stirring that there, Lainey?
Sure.
And a seasoning of salt. When that gets all mixed in, we'll be ready to make our tamales, which we are doing starting with some of those soaked corn husks. You want to choose the largest ones, unbroken, because that'll give you a good wrapper for the tamales. Then scoop out about 1/4 cup of your tamal dough. That'll give you a nice sized tamal. Once that's onto your corn husk, spread it into about a 4-inch square, and then about 2 tablespoons of our filling right down the center. And then watch how we do this. Gonna encase that filling by pulling the 2 sides together and then rolling the unfilled husk around. Now where the masa runs out, that's where you turn it under. Now those little corn husk ties that Lainey made earlier are what we're going to use here to tie our tamales. Putting them right into our steamer top. Now this has been lined with some extra corn husks, the ones that are broken and things like that. Just line it, that'll add extra aroma. And then they go right over the boiling water, put a top on them. If there's any spaces that are in there, you want to wad up some aluminum foil and stuff that down in there so that they stay in their vertical position as they're steaming. And pretty soon, the whole kitchen will be just filled with this incredible aroma.
When are we gonna eat?
Well, we got to see if they're done yet. They've been on for a little over an hour now. Peel back those corn husks and let's just pull one out, because that's the only way you can tell if they're done is to unwrap it. Slide the little tie off like that, and if it comes free, well, it came free completely very quickly from the corn husk wrapper, then you know that they're done. Oh, doesn't that look so good? But we can't eat them because we have to save them for the tamal party later on. So we start our little tamalada with spicy mushroom tamales. But let's say you don't have any corn husks hanging around the house. Well, the chances are you do have one of these, a kitchen towel. And you can use that traditionally to make a tamal as well. But then you're talking a tamalon, or what I translate as a great big tamal roll. And instead of a filling, well, I'm going to put in there something you probably don't associate with Mexican food, and that's chard. Now, the Spaniards introduced it to Mexico centuries ago, and it was adopted immediately. Why, you can find chard in practically every market in Mexico, as well as in my backyard. I grow it because it's really easy, it's really prolific, and if you plant the multicolored varieties, well, it's beautiful. Now, this dish is one of the wonderful little secrets of Mexican cooking. I mean, you won't find it on restaurant menus, can't find it in the street stalls, even in the tamalerias you won't find it. It's because it's a real home dish. And I got a lot of Mexican friends that think very fondly when they hear the name tamalon, because their moms would make it, sort of like comfort food when mom didn't want to form and fill all those individual little tamales. So Lainey, let's throw in the towel and start making it. Now, we got the chard that we brought out of the garden here, and I'm going to show you how you clean a chard leaf. In some countries, they love the stalk. We're not going to use the stalk here. I'm just going to cut that sort of tough stalk out, and then the leaf goes into sort of 1-inch pieces. And you got the batter there, right, Lainey?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to mix this chard right into that batter. Now, we've got just a regular kitchen towel. It can't be a terry cloth type of towel. That would make the tamal stick, so it's got to have a smooth surface. Dampen it, wring it out, and then lay it out in front of you here. Take that masa and put it right down in the middle of the towel. Kind of form it like that. Now, I want it to be fairly even. It'll be about 10 inches or so long. And we're just going to roll it up in the towel, kind of forming it into a loaf shape like that. And I'm going to tie one end of it with a piece of string. And then, if we can switch this one around, we need to plump it a little bit. So I'm going to come in this way. Now, it is going to expand a little bit. It's okay if it's slightly flattened on the top because it is, as it expands, it'll round up in this towel. So now I've tied the two ends, and at this point, if Lainey, you could hand me another one just to ensure that they stay, that it stays round in about 4 spots. I'm gonna give it a loose tie. Now we're ready to steam our tamalon. And for that, we're gonna need a big steamer. I've chosen to use an Asian steamer because I think they're great. They're very easily available and inexpensive at Asian markets. But if you don't have something like that, you could improvise. I've done this a lot of times before. Something like a turkey roaster or a big Dutch oven. Put a wire rack in there. Could use a couple of upturned custard cups in there to support the wire rack up off the water in the bottom. And then you've improvised a little steamer. But I'm going to use this Asian steamer today, and we're going to just fit this right in the middle of it like that. Lay this on top. I heated the steamer already, but now I'm going to bring it up to temperature because when you're making tamales, you want to have a good, even heat, steady steam over medium heat, and you got to watch to make sure that the water doesn't evaporate out of the bottom of your steamer, and this one will take about an hour, hour and a quarter to steam. If we wanted to be perfectly traditional about this next tamal, well, we'd make it 4 or 5 feet long, we'd make it 8 inches thick, and we'd swaddle it in layer after layer of banana leaves. We'd bake it in a wood-fired oven, and we'd enjoy it in the open-air dining rooms that you find in the town of Papantla, Veracruz. It'd certainly be a pretty special occasion. So what do you do if you want to experience the wonder of that saka wheel? Well, you shrink it. At least that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a saka wheel in miniatura. And to start off, we got to make a filling, a beautiful red chili pork filling. Now it starts with the dried ancho chilies. You pull out the stems and take the seeds out and then toast it over medium heat, dry surface on a skillet or a griddle. And once it's toasted and released its aroma into the room, you put it in hot tap water and let it reconstitute for about 20 minutes. I'm gonna take our reconstituted ancho chilies and pour in just enough liquid to allow them to move through the blender blades easily. Piece of onion, just tear that up and put that right in the blender. Roughly chopped garlic. And I'm going to put in a little bit of black pepper that I'm going to crush in this little molcajete. Coarsely grind that. Put that directly into our blender. Put the top on and make a puree. Now, because there might be some little bits of tough chili skin, maybe a few stray seeds, I'm going to strain this puree, and you probably noticed I'm straining directly into a saucepan in which I've got pork shoulder, or what you might just buy as stewing pork from the grocery store. Press that through, you'll see just a little remnants of some skins in there, but it'll make it a lot better. And then I'm going to put in just enough water to make this kind of soupy because it's going to need to simmer for about an hour. I just put in a sprinkling of salt too to give it some flavor. Put a top on it and we'll let it simmer for, well, partially cover it, and we'll let it simmer for about an hour until it's completely fall apart tender. Now the pork has cooled off in its beautiful red chili sauce, and then I took the pieces of pork out and I'm coarsely shredding them with a fork. And of course I said that this saka wheel, that this is the filling for, is wrapped in banana leaves. But we're not making one that's 4 or 5 feet long. I've chosen to do my saka wheel in miniatura in a loaf pan. Lainey's been oiling that loaf pan, but we are gonna line it with banana leaves. Unfold those leaves, and if they feel sort of stiff, ungiving, then run them very quickly over an open flame and they'll soften, or put them into a steamer, and 20 minutes or so, they'll be quite soft and quite pliable. Now, they tear very easily. In fact, we've torn a couple of pieces here, and Lainey's going to help line this loaf pan with these pieces of torn banana leaf. Now, while she's doing that, I'm going to prepare the batter. Now, it's basically the same batter that we've used for all of our tamales. Now, to that, I'm going to add a little of this red chili sauce. Well, this is a little different than the other tamales that we've made. Stir that in. It makes a beautiful color masa, color batter here. You can see what that looks like. It also adds a wonderful flavor. Nothing better than a long-cooked red chili sauce. Now, Lainey, how you coming with that? You got it all lined?
I think I'm finished.
Okay, that looks really good. So half of that goes in. There we go. And I'm going to just spread it to the corners. And then the shredded pork will go on top of that. And you want to help me spread that to the corners. Now, we want to leave a little bit of a border all the way around. We're going to put red chili sauce right down the middle. We'll start the final covering with this red chili masa. That back. Now, you can use your little spreading spatula there, Lainey, to start spreading it over to the edge. Why don't you run around there, Lainey, and get that piece of foil while I give this a finishing touch, because we really do want this to be flat on the top so it'll look beautiful when we unmold it. Let's put that side in, Now, piece of foil on the top. Okay, Lainey, you want to help me crimp it down? And we're going to put this directly into a 375-degree oven for about 30 minutes. Then we'll lower the temperature to 325 and leave it for another hour. Oh, Lainey, I think our saco wheel turned out so good. Well, and that tamalone with that beautiful tomatillo salsa. I don't know if anybody's going to recognize it as a tamal, but I think they're going to love it. Oh, and let's look at these. Wow. Oh, look at those. Everybody's going to want one of those. Here, Sarah, take a plate.